Hey friends, it's Sean from mindpossible.com. I recently did an experiment with some friends of mine here in Denver that I'd like to share with you because I think it offers a lot of learning lessons, and it's also an experiment that you could try with your own friends. If you ever saw that old movie with Tom Cruise in it called The Minority Report, you'll remember the precogs, the psychics they used to see crimes before they happened. And you remember that scene of the precogs floating in the special fluid that will help them perceive these things in the future, to use their precognition. So that's a little bit of the inspiration for this experiment. I thought it would be fun to rent a flotation tank replaced with float tanks in Denver, have my friends be in the tanks, while I and some other friends would visualize or stare at a target for the floating friends to perceive psychically. So they're using their clairvoyance, their clairsentience, all the clairs. And if you're into remote viewing, this has something to offer you too, because some of the terms we'll be using in this presentation have to do with remote viewing, because there's some interesting things that happened. One thing I want to add is that this was not a scientific experiment, meaning there weren't controls. This wasn't a double-blind or triple-blind experiment. To do that kind of a scientific experiment would cost thousands upon thousands of dollars. And this is just me and my friends getting together, no one's spending any money except on the float tanks, and it's just a labor of love. And sharing this with you is also a labor of love. So if you're scientifically minded, don't take this too seriously, just relax and enjoy the show. So what you're going to see in this video is the result of 2 sessions we did. Not everybody could float the first time, so we did a second time. But what was interesting is I unknowingly made a mistake the first time, which you'll see in the course of that video, that changed how I did the second session, and we got interesting results, perhaps even better results the second time. So we're going to learn a lot here. So in the first session, we met outside of a place called Easy Float here in Denver on South Pearl Street. It's a great place. They have a nice lobby, and they have, at this time, 4 flotation tanks open, and I think they have a space for massage therapy. Their float areas are really great because you walk in and there's a shower, there's a place to put your clothes, and then there's the tank itself. And it's not one of those little confined tanks. It's actually really large. They're actually a lot bigger than what you see on this video here. It gives you room to spread out, and it's completely pitch black once you're settled in, floating in the highly salinated water. And it's the same temperature as your skin, so after a while you can't tell where your body ends and the water begins, which is really special. So as our 4 floaters or perceivers got settled into their flotation rooms, the rest of us, who I'll call senders, got settled into the lobby. And I had created a target video that we would all be focusing on at the same time. We all brought our laptops and our headphones, and we just settled in comfortably to watch this video I created that was maybe a little over an hour long. And it was a combination of 2 events. One was the National Dog Show, and the second one toward the end was the Westminster Obedience Championship. So basically what I was hoping for was that at the end of the experiment, the people in the flotation tanks trying to perceive what we were seeing by watching the video, that they'd come out and they would immediately say, "Dogs, I saw dogs." As you'll see, the results were different from that, and that's where my mistake comes in. Now, in the week beforehand and the day before, I had sent everyone on the team some videos to help them prepare for today. If you're interested in seeing those videos that I sent my team, I'm going to put a link to them in the details section of this YouTube video on the YouTube page below. After the session was finished, as the floaters came out of the rooms, I took them outside one by one and recorded their impressions as quickly as I could so that they wouldn't hear each other reporting their impressions, and we could just get an accurate recording. As you watch them report on their perceptions now, I'm going to insert sections from the target video that may have matched up with what they were perceiving.
So I first get in the water and relax, and I just had some faint images run through my mind. At one point I was in a green room, and it felt like the tank was a green room, and then I saw lots of arms in the air, and I just felt like there were people everywhere.
What's interesting here is that there weren't a lot of real people here because of COVID, but they had inserted a lot of artificial people there. So there was the appearance of crowds of people, as you can see here.
And I saw projected onto some walls some bright flashing lights, and it felt like there were walls like surrounding me, like tall walls, and there were lights like flashing off of them, almost like fire, but more man-made. And that's all I can remember.
First image was kind of vivid, and it was, let's see, palm trees, sand, beach, woman with sunglasses and a hat. I mean, the beach scene was pretty vivid.
So I want to pause here and ask you to remember the beach reference that he just made, because that's going to come up again with a couple of other perceivers, and I'll explain why in a few minutes.
Then I saw some creatures, either the heads were like a turtle or a snake or a frog or something like that.
I think the animal reference is good. He didn't say dogs, but at least he said animal.
Also, some animal legs, like the leg on an elephant or rhino or hippo, some big thing like that. Those are the most vivid images.
Now I know trying to connect his reference of animal legs to the dog legs from the video might be kind of a stretch, but remember, this target video could have been about anything in the universe. It could have been about the planet Jupiter, it could have been about a car factory, it could have been about what goes on inside of volcanoes. This video could have been anything, so I think the reference to animal legs is still pretty close. Were there any colors or emotions that stood out?
Blue, green.
So blue was the main color for the National Dog Show, and green was the main color for the Westminster.
I'm going to start with, I'm claustrophobic, so I took a while to calm down. Then I felt I'm watching one of those travel series by this famous travel guy on TV, and he was visiting New Zealand, and it went into nature. Then I saw, and then recreation, I saw this fast, speedy motorcycle going down or up some serpentines. Town feature, then it went into shipping or boat, harbor stuff with diving for old lost ships. I saw an island which reminded me of Robinson Crusoe that was maybe tied to that. I have no idea.
So we have a second reference now to the beach scene.
And I saw a lot of waves coming by, and then I was actually surfing in the wave. That's the thing. And I also saw like an image where I was like balancing in one leg kind of a thing. I mean, it's like a human being balancing like that kind of a situation. It felt like it was like a beach kind of a situation as well towards the end, because I was like surfing and everything. But yeah, so that was pretty much the entire experience.
And a third reference to an ocean scene. So now I'm going to explain what I call my mistake that has affected this experiment so far, and it's connected to the ocean references you've seen already. The day before we met up at the float tanks, I went paddleboarding, and I think it was just my first or second time, and I absolutely loved it. My body was getting used to balancing on the board. I was enjoying the waves, the sunshine. There's a scene of the beach. The beach was right next to me. I was seeing some boats at the nearby piers where they keep the boats. And I loved it. I even dreamt about paddleboarding the night before we met for this experiment. So paddleboarding was clearly in my subconscious mind, and I suspect that they were picking up on that. And I could have been daydreaming about it while I should have been focusing more strongly on the target video. So after our first experiment, I went back to the reservoir and took some video footage of me on the paddleboard to recreate the experience I had, so I can show you more clearly that I think these people may have been perceiving my experience on the water.
Let's see, palm trees, sand, beach, woman with sunglasses and a hat. I mean, the beach scene was pretty vivid.
Then it went into shipping or boat, harbor stuff.
A lot of waves coming by, and then I was actually surfing in the wave. And I also saw like an image where I was like balancing in one leg kind of a thing. I mean, it's like a human being balancing like that kind of a situation.
So there's also the idea that maybe they just thought about the ocean a lot because they happen to be floating in salt water. That's also a possibility. It's hard to tell. But it did give me a clue about how to create the second experiment we would do a few weeks later. Because what they had picked on was possibly my passion, something I was passionate about. So what I wanted to do for the second experiment was create a new kind of target video. This new kind of target video was going to use people's passions and what I knew about the people who would be the receivers the second time around, the people floating in the tanks. I knew that Cheryl used to be a gymnastics coach, so I took some videos off the internet about gymnastics, including some Olympics gymnastics. And I know that Jill is very interested in e-bikes, and I know she goes on trail rides on her e-bike with her partner, so she's very much into bicycling with those electronic bikes. One of the other floaters was involved with martial arts at the same school that I trained at many years ago, but I know that she had done it for much longer than I had. So she had this old interest in martial arts. So I took some videos about people sparring and competitions and included them in the video. And I know that Carol's a school teacher, so I found some footage about different classrooms online and also included that in the target video. So every 5 minutes or so in the target video, the scenes would change. And what I was hoping was that the perceiver's passions, or what they're passionate about, would help them connect to what the senders were seeing on these videos. So would they be more likely to pick up on something that they're already deeply interested in? That was my main question. But of course, I was open to the idea that someone floating would pick up on any aspect of the target video. So even if the person interested in martial arts, you know, they might pick up on a gymnastics routine or on the teacher scene. That was fine with me. They had no idea that the target video would have different topics in it. So we met up again with a different set of senders and a different set of perceivers. Also, about halfway through, or about half an hour into staring at the target video, I took those senders outside of the building to do something that would heighten their energy. And that was a really quick spoon bending party, the psychic spoon bending, if you know, using the mind to channel energy to soften metal so it's soft enough to bend with your hands. So you're not really using your muscles very much, but you're using your psychic energy to bend the metal. And two of the people outside with me had spoons, and the person in the middle had a pegboard hook. And here's what it looks like. If you go to Home Depot, just ask someone for where their pegboard hooks are. This is built by Everbuilt. It's a 1/4 inch by 8 inches of steel. Now you can go to the store and try and bend this with your bare hands, with all your muscles. I've tried and I can't do it. And as you see here in this video, when I took them outside, we did the classic bend, bend, bend. And then one of them actually bent this into a triangle shape. So I thought that that would energize them, and maybe they'd be able to use that enhanced energy somehow to continue sending what they were perceiving when we went back inside and focused on the target video for the rest of the time. Unfortunately, I think it actually affected one receiver's impressions a little bit too much. Let's see what she has to say.
I also saw triangular patterns, and then one that was kind of, it reminded me like the metal, I forget what you call it, the one triangle that's metal when you clang on the sides to make music.
The triangle, yeah. It's called the triangle.
Okay.
The first thing, there was a sequence of things that I saw. First was like a Ferris wheel at a carnival, but the Ferris wheel was the biggest thing that I saw.
Okay, now here's a picture of a Ferris wheel. This is not part of the target video. But what I want to show you is that there were a lot of wheels in the target video because of Jill's interest in e-bikes. So all these bicycles we were staring at for the hour, and so I think there's a similarity between those wheels and the image of a Ferris wheel. And those of you interested in remote viewing, you know what I'm talking about, when the mind will receive an impression and it's not quite sure what it is. So it might pick a different image that's very similar to what they're trying to pick up on psychically. And sometimes we call that analytical overlay.
And I felt excitement, high energy, and I think the last visual I got was ice skating.
Ice skating?
Ice skating. There were a bunch of ice skaters. It could have been tournament, you know, like you would see at a show.
Wait for it.
At the Olympics or something like that.
Oh, okay. There it is. We had plenty of footage in our target video from the Olympics, including the 5 rings of the Olympics logo.
Oh, thank you, because I'm like really dizzy.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I fell asleep too.
Oh.
So the first imagery I saw was of blue whales and everything being really blue and everything, and I think that was just because I'm in the tank of water. So I kind of settled in and that faded away, and I saw yellow flowers, but they were like really dry. And I saw a hillside and it was also like really, really dry. And then I saw a woman, and she was like giving a report, and she had dark hair and it was all pulled to one side. And behind her was very interesting architecture.
After this experiment, we debriefed in a coffee shop, and when I showed Cheryl this footage of a woman giving a report about e-bikes, Cheryl had a strong visceral reaction, and she said, "I think that's the woman that I saw." So you want to add something?
Yeah, I wanted to add that throughout the entire session, I kept hearing the song Mas Canada, which was done with Black Eyed Peas and a collaboration with Sergio Mendes, who I don't know if he wrote the song, but made it popular. And I heard that song over and over and over, and it's because I've been thinking about Simone Biles lately and her getting ready for the Olympics. And since I'm a gymnastics coach, I just passed that off as my own stuff, and I never said anything to Sean about it.
And actually, Simone Biles was in our target video. So this is an important note, that Cheryl was hearing music that because of her background experiences, she associated with Simone Biles. So instead of saying, "I see Simone Biles," she was hearing music associated with her. And that's the way the mind will perceive a lot of things psychically sometimes. Also, the thought that she didn't mention it to me right out of the tank because she thought it was just her stuff, her personal stuff. That's something that happens. Anyone who's taught remote viewing, clairvoyance, or even mediumship knows that when they're working with students, very frequently people will hold back when recording what their impressions are. They're filtering. They're saying, this is a psychic impression and this is just some garbage in my mind that doesn't really matter. In this case, Cheryl thought that this was just her own stuff because she is a gymnastics coach. But that's exactly why I chose Simone Biles and the other gymnastics footage. But Cheryl had no clue that any of this would be on the target video.
Motorcycle racing.
That might relate to the scenes about e-bikes. And interestingly, do you remember this report from the first set of perceivers in our first experiment a few weeks ago?
And then recreation, I saw this fast, speedy motorcycle going down or up some serpentines.
Now, in remote viewing terms, it's called bleed through, when a person perceives a target in the future or out of order. So it's not the next target they were trying to perceive, but the one they would be seeing in the future after that. And it's not that Birgit in this case was one of the floaters for the second week, but it's just interesting to me that she picked up on motorcycles when we were doing e-bikes a few weeks later, when someone else would also be perceiving e-bikes. Was she perceiving the future target accidentally? It happens sometimes in remote viewing.
Some scenes from Chinese mythology that used to scare me when I was a kid. At some point also green fields or like grass, a lot of grass plants.
There were plenty of plants and green grass in a lot of the e-bike footage. Was there anything from your past or memories that came up?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, like the Chinese mythology, there's this park in Singapore that shows like life-size, well, some are life-size, some are not, like dioramas from Chinese mythology, and so that kind of popped into my head. And some of them are really scary, so some of the scary ones sort of stayed in my head.
I just have a question about the Chinese mythology scenes. Were there any martial arts displays in there?
Yeah.
So what I just did there, asking her specifically if there was any martial arts in the impression she was receiving, would not fly in a controlled scientific experiment. But as I talked about already in this video, I know that sometimes people hold stuff back because they think it's just their stuff and not associated with what was in the actual target or associated with an actual psychic impression.
Yeah, there were. Yeah. Oh, I also thought about.
As you'll see, she's going to suddenly remember that she was having impressions from the martial arts school that she and I used to attend. I've muted out the name of that school for her privacy.
Oh, you did?
Sorry, I thought about. Yeah, I had images of like a group class. Just like a group class.
I've inserted some gymnastics footage here just because it might be connected to what she refers to impression of an aerobics class.
I also had images of like an aerobics class as well, which I don't know why I've never been to an aerobics class, but I think just whatever I've seen on TV. So I had images of our group class and aerobics class.
Okay. As a reminder, this was their first time doing this kind of experiment using flotation tanks, and our goal really overall was to have fun. And my goal in sharing this with you is to give you ideas of what you could try with your own friends at home. And actually, you don't need float tanks to do this kind of experiment. You could just have your receivers laying down or sitting comfortably in a separate room while your senders are in a different room staring at their target video or any kind of target you'd like to use. And again, if you'd like to watch the preparatory videos I sent the receivers and the senders before our experiments, just use the link in the details section below. And finally, I just want to thank everyone who's bought one of my books about psychic development or one of my online courses, because it's through that kind of support that I can set time aside to record these experiments and share them with you and others so that you can try this stuff on your own. All right, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.